All right. I'm Representative Ruel Roman.
And I'm Senator Josh McLaurin, and this is What's on Fire.
So, what's on fire?
A lot of things are on fire. This is our first video, and it feels like we have a lot of things we have to cover to have journalistic integrity. There's too many things.
Listen, we're going to try to speed run through this. We'll try to keep it detailed, but also not too much. So let's start on the federal level because it impacts everyone, even if they're not in Georgia.
Yeah, and to be clear, we're state legislators, right?
Yeah.
And we're in the minority party in Georgia.
Yeah.
So we have lots of time on our hands to talk about what's happening everywhere because we don't pass bills. That's what the majority party does.
Hey, we can try.
I digress.
We can try. Listen, it works. We try our best over here. So,
yeah.
What's on fire? We're going to talk about some grants today? We're going to talk about some funding?
I mean, look, so I'm an attorney. I worry about the rule of law, okay? Rule of law, because Trump has basically made it sound like he's not going to follow court orders. I think maybe today he made some stray comment like, of course I follow the courts. But all of his people, his vice president, Stephen Miller, that guy, a bunch of other folks have been saying stuff that's not normal about courts. Like courts don't have the ability to tell the executive what to do. And then, one district court in one random state, like trying to control the federal government. Yes, that's what courts do. And so as an attorney and a citizen, I've been really worried about that. But obviously there's a lot of funding and money issues as well.
Yeah, and frankly, I'm not an attorney. For me, the things I think about isn't just what's happening in a courtroom, but who are the people that are carrying out these orders and what does that look like for them? So when we talk about things like grants, yes, a lot of federal courts have put various stops on what President Trump has tried to do with executive orders. The problem is some of that money still hasn't gone back to the programs, which means that people are losing their jobs. You have PhD students who are losing their fellowships. It has caused a lot of disruption. And in a state like Georgia, for example, our universities are losing hundreds of millions of dollars that is going to be incredibly disruptive for their academics.
And there's been some really crisis of humanity type stuff too. USAID, right, is one of the big punching bags for Elon Musk and the Trump administration right now. And part of that is because we've been using USAID now for decades, I think, to increase our global legitimacy and our ability to advance pro-democracy policies and gain favor for the American way of life around the globe. So we have critical care functions in all kinds of countries to monitor and cure diseases, to provide humanitarian aid. What we're seeing is that the USAID employees who are getting illegally fired en masse are just being cut loose with no financial support for them personally. In some cases, they're having trouble getting out of the country. I think one USAID employee filed a lawsuit basically saying that they had to pull emergency strings and have some officials help them at risk of getting terminated because they were helping them get waivers or some sort of a cost assistance in getting a flight out of the country when there were protesters banging down their doors. So really scary stuff. And I think there's a level of cruelty that goes into this that we need to talk about, which is it's one thing to go to Congress and say, I don't think this agency should exist or we should reduce its funding, and to go through the process and do it correctly. It's another thing to just rip the Band-Aid, cause a bunch of chaos, or I guess pull the plug from the wall, really. And then a bunch of people either die or seriously harmed as a result of the way that this is done. And so that's one thing I'm trying to tell my friends who disagree on the policy. I'm like, go to Congress, fix it the right way. Don't put all these people's lives in jeopardy and risk our standing around the globe.
And I want to be clear, we're not exaggerating here when we say that people died, right? We are now hearing stories of people who are getting care through USAID employees that are running out of oxygen. A woman just passed away yesterday because of it. There are people who have been undergoing experimental treatment that have devices in their bodies that they don't know how to get removed anymore. So for those who aren't familiar, for example, if you're undergoing cancer treatment, you have ports that are placed in your body. Now there's no one to take them out. And again, the issue, as Senator McLaurin mentioned, that if you disagree with this policy, if you're somebody who's like, I want to spend all this money at home, totally valid policy position, to be clear. But the problem is when you do it this way, you are putting real lives in danger. And that is not an exaggeration to be saying that. So you're right, a lot of things are on fire. It impacts people all around the world. It impacts us right here at home. We just learned about a local peanut farmer who has had a ton of their product be stalled at ports, which means that it could go bad. He might lose his entire business as a result, right? Even if you hate all of this stuff, give people notice. Don't destroy their livelihoods overnight.
And it speaks to just how wild the administration's initial plans are in the first couple of weeks, how fast they're moving. There's this phrase, right, in the tech sector of move fast and break things, like for tech startups. And look, if you control your own company, if you are a private industry person and you own a company completely, do whatever you want with that company. Move fast, break things. But the federal government's different because we're doing it together. It's a group project, right, as some politicians like to say. It's the public sector. And so there are laws that regulate what you can and can't do in terms of process, because the whole idea is to work together and come to things by consensus. And so I think one thing the administration has underestimated is how many people they're going to hurt this quickly by being so reckless. It's not like they went through the federal budget and said, let's pick a handful of things that we think are unpopular and let's just freeze those things. They froze everything, or they tried to. And so now every university in the country is scrambling because their research dollars are drying up, just like the representative said. And, you've got people like farmers in Georgia. So people who aren't traditionally coded as like liberals or conservatives, it's not like only affecting blue states or red states or one type of people. The way that they're doing this is taking a wrecking ball to everybody's well-being. And with the Treasury stuff, if I may keep ranting for one moment,
Please.
The U.S. Treasury Department was in a little bit of crisis because Elon Musk, who, by the way, hired like 6 people who are like ages 19 to 24. Wired did this reporting. Go check it out. Wired.
It was really good.
Yeah, and it's like one of the kids' names on LinkedIn is Big Balls. Like, it's just non-serious stuff. And so these guys were the guys who were being given access to the entire United States payment system, like its checkbook, where it spends, trillions of dollars, both here and abroad, by the way, to meet its bond obligations. Like, we are the reserve currency for the world because of how stable we are as a country and how we are expected to always keep our promises when it comes to money and finance.
And to be clear, if you care that much about fraud, if you care that much about reducing government spending, y'all want to know the one contract that has been consistently getting renewed during all this chaos? Elon Musk's contracts. And so, it's absurd to me that we keep getting the rug pulled out from under us by the same people who keep telling us they're trying to do what's good for us in our country and then continue to put more money in their own pocketbooks. So, on that note, what's going on in Georgia? Because I'm pretty sure that fire, like I said, has touched a lot of us, but legislatively, let's open that can of worms.
So Trump just won an election telling a bunch of people he was going to reduce costs. And what did he start doing? He immediately went after DEI programs, diversity, scrubbing climate from websites, like not even talking about climate change anymore. And what we're seeing is something similar at the state level. So in Georgia, the Georgia Senate has already passed, I think, 2 anti-trans bills. And it's like, look, again, there are people who have varying levels of comfort with the, trans issues in general. And this is kind of like how gay rights had to evolve, is you had to know somebody and get familiar to really understand the plight that people go through. But in any event, before trying to understand trans people or like learn anything about their healthcare needs, the social stigmas, the increased rates of violence, what the Republicans of the majority have done is they have realized this is good red meat for their politics. And they just, right out the gate, like the first 2 weeks of session, are passing bills designed to take away health care from trans people, to limit their civil rights, and basically just bully them because they think it's popular. So I've had a really not fun time in the Senate because of that.
Yeah, and look, on the House side, it is no different. We've had a lot of our colleagues who've been trying to echo a lot of this really hateful messaging, and it's really easy to punch at people that can't punch back at you. It's really easy to punch at people who are minorities because you can quote unquote get away with it. But that's unacceptable. I think we need to start learning as a community, as a society, that hurting people is unacceptable. And that should be a red line. It doesn't matter because they'll coach it in things like, oh, we're just trying to be fair. Oh, we're just trying to save you tax dollars. But I need folks to start asking themselves, who is benefiting from this and who is being hurt by this and why is it important? And so, even on things like the budget, for example, our only constitutionally mandated job, if we passed no other bill but just did our budgets, we'd be good to go, right? Like, that is what constituents need from us. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that with all of these disruptions, right? Like,
it's a lot of distractions.
Yeah, everyone's acting like business as usual while the world is on fire. And so that's why we want to talk to y'all about what is on fire this week. Really, really excited to keep talking about more things in the future. We'll be talking about more bills that we are working on. We'll be introducing, talk a little bit more about the federal stuff too. So make sure you stay tuned. Any last thoughts, Senator?
Yeah, something else is on fire. Price of eggs are still going up.
Oh my God.
Waffle House. Surcharge.
Yes.
They put 50 cents extra on your eggs.
Listen,
ask yourself what Donald Trump's doing about that.
This
Nothing.
Is unacceptable. Prices keep going up and we're just getting, things are getting worse. So keep joining us, keep staying involved, keep staying engaged, and leave us your thoughts and let us know what you want to hear about in our next episode of What's on Fire.